All right, dudes, let's talk about Atomfall. So, a lot of people have compared it to Fallout or have said that the style reminds them of Fallout. I think that those comparisons may have been made before they actually played the game. Comparing Atomfall to Fallout is kind of like saying The Witcher and Baldur's Gate 3 are the same thing. You could definitely pick out similarities and kind of like force comparisons, but they're completely different things. Atomfall in particular, when I initially picked up this game, I really was like, okay, it's a survival shooter with like RPG elements. And you could say that that's the case. However, honestly, it's more a game about exploration. Even when you're going in and you're setting up your playstyle, you're given 5 different options. So anywhere from sightseer to veteran. The recommended is survival. And basically what you're doing is setting the difficulty level on 3 different components, which are combat, survival, and exploration. So combat, obviously very self-explanatory. It's going to be the difficulty in how challenging your interactions are, but also how many enemies are coming at you. So like, how often are you encountering enemies? Survival, that encompasses a little bit more. So, I mean, it's going to be your health regeneration. This game's version of stamina is a heart rate, which I actually think is really, really interesting because when your heart rate gets too high, you kind of just like, you can't do anything, right? You start getting blurry around the edges, you're gasping, you're wheezing, which is freaking hilarious. But in addition to that, so survival would also encompass like the bartering system. You're going to see there's no money because you're dealing basically with I wouldn't say society, but I mean, I guess you could say it's a version of society that's been stuck under a quarantine. Think of like Stephen King's Under the Dome, if you've ever seen that. It's basically one day a town is encompassed by this invisible bubble, and nothing can come in and nothing can go out. And that's kind of what's happening in Atomfall. So money is not a thing. So you're basically just trading goods, which is really interesting. Then of course there's exploration. So exploration, this game, you really, really need to read every note, every letter, and you need to exhaust every conversation option because there are things that you are going to miss. Even if you set the exploration to the easiest level, they're still not really holding your hand. So you may not fully know what you need to do or where you need to go. They are going to give you a journal and they're going to give you a generalization. They're going to say, okay, well, here's your main story and, here's some additional side quests. But for you to be able to figure out how to navigate the world and in what order that you're navigating the world, you really do need to make sure that you're reading and that you are, again, exhausting those conversation options. In addition to that, I will say, as far as the conversation options are concerned, you never want to go with your first instinct. Nothing is what you expect it to be. There is, for example, a quest that you'll probably stumble onto pretty early, and I'm going to try to keep this video fairly spoiler free. I'm going to try to generalize, but for this particular quest, I am going to give just a little bit more information just to give you some context. So you're in the village of Wyndham. If you go into the church, you're going to find a crime scene, okay? And it's going to be a dead woman who's Maisie. You're going to have a vicar, and you're going to have one other bystander who is obviously like on the vicar's side. So you come in, you see this woman, she's been stabbed with a sickle, and the vicar is immediately like, hey, we can't tell anybody. The protocol, which you'll find out the protocol is basically like a governing army presence that's within the village. They've kind of just taken everything over and they're kind of just like running everything essentially and bossing people around and bullying people, and you'll see more of that. But in this particular case, the vicar is very insistent nobody can find out about this. If somebody finds out about this, the protocol is going to come down really, really hard on the village, and he is he is presenting himself as someone that is on the side of the village and trying to do what's best for the village. So you can decide to go along with that, or you can say screw you, and you can go tell the protocol what happened. You will find throughout the game that there are different factions, and you can kind of play them off of each other. But for this particular scenario, if you delve into it a little bit more, you will follow the quest and you will find a letter that is going to tell you where you need to go to find out more about the murder. And then once you get there, you're going to find out a little bit more information, and then you can return to the vicar, and you're going to basically be able to kind of detective out who committed this murder. And the vicar is going to say to you, well, this is a really, really bad person, and this person, they have to be killed at all costs, but no one else can know about this, but can you please take care of this? And he makes a really, really convincing argument as to why this person needs to be done away with. And my instinct was like, okay, I'm going to go and I'm just going to kill the guy because that's what seems like is best for the village. He's committed this murder, blah, 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 blah. So I go find the guy, and you'll see as you play the game, you can just outright shoot people, but you can also kind of lean into more stealth elements. We'll get into that a little bit later, but I literally went into this person's store and was about to just break his neck. However, I decided to just speak to him and see what kind of conversation options that he had. And after speaking to him, it was very clear that my initial impression of the situation may not be actually correct. Now, you can make an argument and say, okay, well, maybe it's a matter of perspective, right? Maybe he really is the bad guy and he's just lying to you. However, the argument that the person who committed this crime gave me was convincing enough that I went back to the church and I decided to kill the vicar. So with that being said, you do always just dig into the conversations. It's really, really, really important to just overall enjoyment. And it takes what could be a really superficial interaction and grows it into something much more meaningful. Okay, so let's actually circle back to the beginning to give you a little bit more information. I tend to get really excited and meander a little bit, so if I do too much of that, I do apologize. That being said, you do open up the game as someone who just wakes up and has absolutely no memory of who they are or what they're doing. So you wake up inside of a bunker, someone in a hazmat suit comes up to you, they're wounded, they're pleading for you to help them, and they're insisting, don't trust anyone. So you can choose to either okay, I will say you can kill pretty much anybody in this game as far as I'm aware. There may be somebody that you can't kill, but you can literally just destroy everyone. So you can choose to either help this person or you can kill them. However, I would suggest assisting them. It does play into a bit of the story later on down the line, so I would suggest not killing them. As you get outside, you realize you're in just this beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous place. However, across the mirror, and you are going to hear that phrase, across the mirror, very, very many times in this game, you can see what looks like some kind of like nuclear power plant, and above that, there's this swirling sort of like purple tornado thing that's happening. As you're descending down the hill, there's your very quintessential British toll booth, or not toll booth, sorry, call box. And as you're approaching this call box, the phone will ring. And if you pick up the phone, which you should pick up the phone, a voice is going to tell you that you need to kill Oberon, and it's not going to give you any more context. And so from there, you are going to be interacting with people with dialogue options of things like curious, evasive, aggressive, wary, suspicious. You get the gist, and how you're responding to people affects how they interact with you specifically. As you're going through and you're progressing the story, the call booths will keep reoccurring. So whenever you do something that's a little bit more important to the story and you get close to a call booth, you're gonna hear the phone ring, you're gonna go and answer it, and you're gonna get more information. Not necessarily, okay, information would be kind of a broad statement. You're going to kind of get more, you're gonna get drip fed. You're gonna get a little bit of something. They're gonna be offering you some sort of guidance, but the main thing with this person that's on the other end of the phone is they're basically telling you, don't trust anyone, only trust me. So up front, you're very quickly being fed sort of mystery and paranoia, and someone is telling you nothing is as it seems. My personal theory, and you'll kind of make your own as you're playing this game, but my personal theory, and I don't consider this a spoiler, but I believe that you're very likely, especially with like the phone calls and stuff, you're very likely a sleeper agent that has been planted, and your kind of goal is to go through and, you know, kill Oberon, which I'm not going to go too much into that because that gets into some pretty major spoiler territory. But you can actually choose not to do that. There are, I think, about 6 different endings. I will say, so I put about 36 hours into this, and I was very thorough. So I was fully engaging with the system. I was interacting with everybody. I was like, if anything could be picked up, I was picking it up. If anything could be interacted with at all, I was interacting with it. I think that generally speaking, you could probably get through this game in 10 to 20 hours, depending on how you play it. It's not something that I would necessarily consider a linear story, especially if you've not played it before. You may not know exactly where to go and what to do and exactly when to do those things. And that's what I was talking about when I was mentioning, you know, make sure you're interacting with the notes and the letters, make sure you're reading things, and during conversations, you want to make sure you're not zoning out. You do want to actually pay attention to those, because even like little things that you may not necessarily think that much of, coordinates, etc., all of that is going to sort of push the story along, and even in a lot of cases help you find loot that is very valuable to your survival. And speaking of loot, we're going to talk a little bit about that. You have an inventory. It is a limited inventory, so management is going to be important. You kind of have to divvy it up between, you know, health items, boosts, weaponry. That's obviously a big thing. You have bandages, you have first aid kits, which are more rare. You have food, which is a little bit rarer. You have stimulants, so training stimulants are how you level up your skills. You'll see a not super exhaustive skill tree. It's, you know, it's pretty simple, but it is kind of fun. So you, I mean, you can level up your health, you can level up your heart rate, and obviously what you're choosing to level up is going to affect your playstyle. So I mean, in addition to that, it's not just, you know, health and heart rate. It's also, you know, your bartering, your crafting, and crafting in particular in this game is kind of interesting. So ammo is one thing that it's not super rare. However, it is possible to run out. So you do sort of want to be strategic about how you're shooting. So you don't want to just like unload on somebody and just be shooting them in the torso. You do want to try to aim for headshots as much as you can. You have to kind of consider the concept of this is, you know, this is a quarantine, nothing's coming in, nothing's going out. So the ammo that they have is pretty limited. So when you kill someone and you loot them, you're going in, you're picking up their ammo, you're checking their weaponry. You can actually unlock a specific skill that allows you to upgrade your weapons, but I think it requires like 7 training stimulants, which is actually quite a bit. The weaponry itself, you start out with like rusty guns. There's melee combat, and the shooting I do enjoy quite a bit. There's even a point where you can acquire a bow and arrow, which is really, really fun. And that will kind of help you be a little bit more stealthy when you have to, kill people. You can acquire grenades, you can have Molotov cocktails, you can have kind of DIY bombs, so like nail bombs, you can have swarm lures, you can have knives, clubs, axes, all this is like how you want to do your play style. I will tell you, definitely keep at least one melee item with you at all times. You'll find when you're going through like caves, bats are going to swarm you. You want to be able to hit them. Even if you're like out in a field, you may get attacked by a swarm of crows or a murder of crows. And you want to be able to swing. I mean, you can you can kick, you can Sparta kick, you can swing with your gun, but it's really valuable to have at least one melee item. I will say that melee does feel a little sluggish and clumsy. It's not as seamless as I would like it to be. However, that being said, shooting feels great, especially when you get to the point where you get rifles and you have different versions of weaponry. I mean, you start out with like a pretty crappy revolver and then you can upgrade that, or you can get like an M9 or an SMG. There's many different kinds of weapons that you can have. I believe the DLC, if you purchase that, it's not available right now, but they mentioned unlocking new weaponry in that. So I will say, as someone who, one of my favorite playstyles in Cyberpunk is knife throwing, and this definitely does not compare. Punching, it's okay. Kicking is kind of fun because you're literally just like Sparta kicking someone and doing a pretty considerable amount of damage. But again, it doesn't feel as good as I would like it to feel. It does feel a little weighted, and that could be intentional. That might kind of be the point. But where it really shines for me is the rifles are my favorite. The bow and arrow, absolute favorite. Getting a headshot with those feels amazing. And I would say it does feel really good because this is from a first-person perspective. You're sort of like that OG Bethesda character. You're nameless, you're faceless, you're voiceless. When you start the game, there's no character creator. You're kind of just like a cookie cutter, like, all right, here's your boots, here's some cool-looking gloved hands, let's get into it. So you could say your character isn't necessarily given a lot of personality. Most of your personality is derived from those conversation options that you're choosing. So whether you're choosing to be helpful, or if you're kind of a dick, or you're kind of just out for yourself and you're a little scummy, all of those things are up to you specifically. Now, I would like to take a little bit of time to talk about traversal. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this is a game about exploration. You are going to be running around so much. One of the more frustrating things that I found about this game is that there is no fast travel system. I believe that that's more than likely intentional because there's just like stuff everywhere. You could just be, at one point you're going to either find or barter for a metal detector, and when you're in an area that might have a cache that you can dig up, you're going to get kind of a little ping that's going to indicate to you that you need to pull out your metal detector and kind of like poke around. And through that's one of the ways that you're acquiring loot. And most of the time, like, there's one section, it's way the heck out in the woods, and I found a cache that had, I think, like 6 grenades in it. And grenades in this game are really, really, really valuable. That being said, you want to keep those grenades and those bombs, absolutely, even if you need to drop something out of your inventory to keep them, because if you're playing at a more challenging combat level, you are going to have groups that you want to be able to hit them with either like a Molotov or a grenade or a bomb. You want to be able to take them down quickly because they're going to overwhelm you quickly. But getting back to the exploration component, it's just, you can tell that they want you to be sniffing in every single corner of this world. I would like to have seen once you have traversed through an area, for you to be able to unlock a fast travel point, because it can be really kind of tedious to run back and forth between different regions, so to speak. Because you're gonna see when you're in this, when you interact with a character, even if you think that quest is done, you're gonna want to go back, because very likely there's going to be an outcome that is going to be outside of your conversation that you would not see unless you went back. I don't really want to say that this game is full of like fetch quests, because I don't think that that's factual. However, that being said, you are going to be sent to and fro, hither and thither, very, very many times. It's not fast travel, but you can unlock doors that lead you to a main hub that make that a little bit easier. But, first you have to find those doors, and then, characters, or I should say NPCs, they are, those combatants, they are respawning, which is good, because, you don't want to completely clear out an area and not be able to, go back through and, get more loot, more ammo, more weaponry, whatever the case. So, of course, they need to respawn. However, having to fight your way through another horde of the same enemy just to get to a particular quest to be able to expand the story, that can be a little frustrating. And on the topic of enemies, what you're going to find, it's primarily human. However, you're going to encounter things I mentioned before, like a murder of crows randomly attacking you, or there may be an area where there's infection, so you're going to be swarmed, particularly in the interchange. I'm not going to go too much into that, because that's a bit more into the story, which you should hopefully experience for yourself. But once you get into the interchange, or even in cellars, etc., you're going to see that you may be attacked by infected rats, or if you get into water, there may be fish that decide to attack you. In addition to that, there are different factions, so not every single human NPC is the same as far as your enemies. They're typically related to, okay, these are the outlaws, this is the protocol, this is the cult that's out in the woods, or whatever the case may be. You'll also encounter what are called feral. Now, you won't encounter them as much, and you will encounter them primarily in specific locations. However, they are tough. At the end of this, you are going to get hammered. So I will say, when you get to the point of no return, and they will tell you you're getting to the point of no return, multiple times, they're going to tell you, make sure you're prepared. You do literally want to be prepared. So you want to be stocked up on ammo, you want to be stocked up on health, you want to make sure that you have any skills unlocked that you may possibly need. One, as just a word of advice that I would really, really recommend that you unlock, is blue fingers. I'm not going to go too much into that, but when you get the ability to unlock it, spend the stimulants to unlock it. It's very, very valuable, and you will thank me later. So I think that, for the most part, covers what I wanted to talk about. My overall verdict of this game is it's decent. It's not amazing. It's certainly not bad by any means, especially when you think about the development company that made this. They're not massive. They're not huge. The graphics are amazing. The story writing is pretty decent. I will say the ending for me personally, and I played through, I think about 4 of the endings. I basically just did a save and then reloaded to do some of the other endings. I didn't feel like it was conclusive, but it was a little bit of a letdown. It felt a little superficial, because you're going through this entire game, and you've kind of got this build up to unraveling a mystery that, it's not as mysterious as I would have liked it to be, and the ending is just kind of like, okay, we got to the ending. What are we doing from here? This is not a game that I would necessarily replay. I wouldn't go back for the DLC. That's me personally. I prefer something that's a little bit more just heavy on the story, heavy on the character interactions. I will say the characters that you encounter, they're very memorable. The voice acting is fantastic. The overall sound design is pretty decent. I wish there was more music. One thing for me that really, really, really will set a mood, and I think for anybody and really builds up immersion, is music. And I just, there wasn't like occasionally you get a little bit of combat music, or, it's just something that would normally really pull you into a moment and set a tone for you. And there really wasn't a lot of that, especially with how much you're walking around. There's just not enough to really hold you, if that makes sense, which, that being said, it's very action paced, so you're not ever necessarily bored. But when I'm running from one end of the map to the other, and this is one thing that Fallout specifically did, or even, Skyrim, you've got music. Skyrim has an epic soundtrack. Fallout, you've got the radio. And again, I wouldn't, you can make comparisons to this. This is more just a point of how important it is to have music to balance out an experience for you. And that's one thing that I just really, 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 really missed. But I will say, other than that, the sound design was, it was pretty okay. The combat, once again, that was fun. I enjoyed it. I don't have too many complaints about that, aside from just the melee. If you were to ask me, give it an overall rating out of 10, I'd say, maybe like a 6.5. Definitely not something that I would be let down in or disappointed in, but like 2 years from now, I'm not gonna really remember it that much. However, I will say, if you see this game and you love exploration, you love survival games, snap it up. If you see it on a Steam sale, definitely get this. It's definitely worth experiencing, and it is an overall super fun experience. So that'll be it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you pick up the game, and I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did.